I'm delighted to be joined now by Terry Saunders, who's a member of Beatles Ireland and one of the organisers of the Beatles Dublin Festival, which has operated in the city down through the years. Terry, thanks very much for joining me. Can I just ask you where it all began for you with the Beatles? When did your sort of fandom or an interest in the band begin and sort of develop over time into the interest that you clearly have in?
It developed. I was coming into my teens, and I think the influences that people have at that sort of age in terms of music that they enjoy, it stays with them forever. And of course they were so vibrant in terms of they were changing so much and challenging so much, not only just in their music but in their image, and also helping to empower young people to be different and to grow their hair long and defy their parents. So whatever young people like to do, I was one of those. So the Beatles were a huge influence very, very early on. And then at a later stage, as John Lennon's pacifism became more and more to the fore, that defined my own sense of pacifism, because I happen to have a very strong Northern Ireland background. And when the troubles started in Northern Ireland, I used some of the pacifism that I learned and was developed through my love of John Lennon. I used that later on, and I was able to work on the peace process many years later. So it had a defining role in my life.
And speaking of John Lennon, actually, because you were showing me beforehand some of the photographs and artefacts that you have with you today, but there's a wonderful photograph you have of John Lennon that was taken in the late 60s with Maureen Hall. Could you say a little bit about the photograph, please, and the story behind it?
Yeah, luckily enough, Maureen and Dick Hall, they're part of Beatles Ireland. Dick, unfortunately, was passed on a few years ago. But back in the day, Dick Hall was in the British Army and he was based in Germany. And I understand from those days that Maureen and himself, they heard of the Beatles in Hamburg and would have seen them in Hamburg many times. And at some later stage, they came back to London on a visit, Richard and Maureen, and they decided to spend a day actually just looking around at the various Beatles houses in around London direction. And they came to John Lennon's house, and in those days you could stop outside of it. I think they pulled up the car outside, and Maureen absolutely chancing her arm. There were no fans around the gate this particular day, and she went over. She pressed a buzzer for his house, and some voice answered her, and she explained that she was Maureen Hall from Ireland, and she knew that John was very interested in Irish history and his collection, and she wondered would Mr. Lennon be available today to see her, and absolutely chancing her arm. But as it happens, they weren't on tour. He was at home, he was in the house. So whoever took the call at the gate from her obviously spoke to John, and John was upstairs in his bedroom. He was actually shaving at the time, and the buzzer went again outside the gate, and Maureen, and a voice just said, "Please proceed up to the house." So Maureen started heading up, and she called her husband to join her, and he locked the car and they headed up. And as they were heading up towards the house, John Lennon stuck his head out the top window, and his face was covered in foam from shaving, and he said he'd be down in a few minutes, and he came down. They could not believe that they were going to meet, she was going to meet her hero, and she'd no script prepared. All she had planned was that maybe to get an autograph and to leave. She was conscious of his time, never mind her own possibly as well. But she ended up speaking in the house with him for maybe an hour or so, and they were in a room which had a very large display cabinet full of all sorts of awards in it. And towards the very end of the conversation, Maureen asked John, could she have an autograph to bring back to Ireland to her friends, and he said that he could do better than that, and he reached into the display cabinet and he took out his Ivor Novello award for She's Leaving Home, and he handed that to Maureen. So the photograph that you're looking at is that unique one.
Yeah, so there's an award for that song from the Sgt. Pepper album, and I can see here on the note on the back that the photograph was taken on the 7th of June 1968 by Maureen's husband Richard, and it said that John, when he gave the award to her, he said, "It's only gathering dust inside my house."
Yes, indeed, yeah.
Maureen comes from County Clare?
Well, I know that they've lived in County Clare. I'm not quite sure where she came from. There may have been a Kildare connection. I'm not absolutely certain about that, but I think at one stage the family moved to Kildare. Richard and Maureen invited me and other people from Beatles Ireland down there many years ago as part of a magical mystery tour that we ran each year. We went down to their house, spent a night with them anyway, and our house was basically a shrine to the Beatles in terms of memorabilia from the 60s, including, I think you could get in the 60s, you could get wallpaper. They had all sorts of memorabilia hanging up on the walls. So it was a lovely time for us all to get there.
And I can see on the back of the photograph which Maureen gave you, there's a lovely message which shows that she was a Beatles fan, because it says, with love from Maureen, all you need is love.
Yes, indeed, yeah.